Hi, and welcome to another edition of Todd Talk, where we take teaching theory and turn it into teaching practice. The topic for today's talk will be spring break. So, we are getting ready to go on spring break, and the kids are excited, and the teachers are excited, and everyone is excited. I would say typically on spring break, the day before you go on spring break, teachers are a little more focused than they are when it comes to winter break and summer break, where the last day is kind of a waste day a lot of times. And I do have another Todd talk that talks about things that you could do on the day before holiday break um, or winter break. And so in this case, however, kids are usually pretty much doing with their routines and and doing their classwork and things of that nature. So what this Todd Talk is going to be helping you to do is to help your kids have a meaningful spring break. So, what are things that you can suggest to them to make sure that they are getting something out of their spring break? I am by no means suggesting that you assign a book report or a research paper or an assignment or a project where they're going to be working over their spring break. What I am saying is that there are opportunities for kids to learn during spring break, just like there are opportunities to learn anywhere. And helping kids to seize those opportunities and see them for what they are is going to be really important. So, I have 5 tips for helping kids to learn during spring break. The first tip is if they're going somewhere, make sure they are paying attention. I talk to students all the time that go out to great locations, whether they're going to Texas or Florida or even to like the Dominican Republic or someplace like that. And yet they come back and I ask how things were, and they don't really have much to report on. It was like they hadn't even left, where they were from. So having kids be mindful about where they're going. So one thing I always suggest is for kids to get their heads out of their phone and out of their laps when they're driving somewhere and pay attention. So you don't have to watch the entire time, but are you seeing, what's going on in the world around you rather than just focused in on what's immediately in front of you. So getting kids to pay attention to that. So again, not having kids write a report on this, but when a kid tells you that they're going to go somewhere for vacation, spring break, when they get back, ask them how things went. That's another a way that kids know that you care about them is that you remember where they were going. And again, you don't have to make an assignment, but just have a conversation with that child and what they got out of it, and did they get something meaningful out of it. So encouraging your kids to pay attention when they go on spring break if they're going somewhere, and making sure they're getting the most out of their experience. The second thing is if they're not going out of town, a lot of kids stay in town, a lot of teachers stay in town. My suggestion is to have them be tourists in their own town. So, what that means basically is that there are lots of really cool things to do in your town. And sometimes we take for granted what is immediately around us. So, there might be a lot of great activities that you can do, or a lot of like parks or museums or um, different different opportunities for students to explore and kind of check things out, and so you don't have to go somewhere to get something meaningful. You can be a tourist in your own town. So whether it's going to the park and taking a walk, whether it is taking them someplace that you've never been in the town. I've lived in the town I live in for the last 22 years, and there are still things that I'm discovering when I drive around or when I pay attention. So similarly, have your kids pay attention, have them be tourists in their own town. So the third thing that I'm going to suggest is screen time. So as a teacher, I am in no way, shape, or form suggesting that you suggest to parents the amount of screen time that their child gets to watch. That is a family decision. That's something that they need to decide on for themselves, how much screen time they're going to give a child. But undoubtedly, a child is going to have some screen time. Uh, and so the question is, as their teacher, can you point them in the direction of content that is going to be meaningful or is going to help them to learn? And it doesn't have to be blatantly an educational program, but there are all sorts of cool tutorials on YouTube that allow kids to learn how to do something, whether it's how to fold a paper airplane or how to make a really cool water, bomb. So, they're learning in that process. So there are things that you can point them towards. I will include a link to a web page that has all sorts of really cool um, YouTube channels, but some of those are that kids can look at are there's what's called TED Ed, and TED Ed is basically lessons for kids, whether they're riddles or they investigate nature or something like that. They can watch these and they get something from those. Um, it's okay to be smart is one. It is about science and the universe that they live in. However, it is kid friendly, and this could be kids of all ages. There's going to be different content for different age kids. So depending on the age of your students, the content is going to be more appropriate or not. One that's really good is by Amy Poehler. It's called Smart Girls, and it's a do-it-yourself, such as how to make bath bombs. But it's designed to inspire girls specifically. So if you have, you want to direct girls towards these, they'll get something inspiring out of. So those are just some suggestions for, and like I said, I'll have a link to the site that lists 10 different and how you get there. That you can suggest to students so that when they are on their screen, which undoubtedly they're probably going to be during their spring break, they are, some of that time is spent for the purposes of good rather than the purposes of evil. The fourth thing I'm going to talk about is a passion project. So again, I'm not suggesting you assign kids something or that you grade something or anything of that nature, but you can certainly challenge your students. You can challenge your students to learn about something, especially if they're not going anywhere for spring break. You can challenge them to learn something they've always wanted to learn. It doesn't have to be educational in nature. It could be they've always wanted to learn how to ride a skateboard. So challenge them to do that. To get outside and get off their butt and to try learning something that they haven't learned. Most students love to learn, and so they just don't necessarily love to learn what you want to teach them. And so spring break is a perfect time to explore that love of learning and something that they've always wanted to learn. And again, it's not a kid sitting reading a book during the entire spring break. It's them learning something that they've always been curious about or they wanted to know more about, but basically, giving them the nudge that they should try something that they've always wanted to try. It's the perfect opportunity to do that. So that would be the fourth suggestion. The last suggestion is a pretty obvious suggestion, and one I try to do with students all the time, and it may fall on deaf ears a lot of times, but regardless, I always encourage kids to go outside. Depending on where you live, spring break a lot of times is the first time that the sun has cracked out of the sky in the past 4 months. And so getting kids to get outside and experience that is always a really, really good thing, whether it's even in their own backyard or their front yard. My daughter, when finally started to get warm, she immediately went outside with her box of chalk and drew all sorts of pictures all over the driveway because she was just itching to get outside. And she's not an outside person, but she was itching to get outside. So a lot of your kids are probably itching to get outside as well. So encourage them to do that, whether it's playing sports or just going for a walk or, going and playing with the dog, or, there's all sorts of experiences that can happen outside, or playing a sport. There's all sorts of experiences that kids can do outside. And so any nudging you can do or suggesting or any influence you can have on helping them do that is going to be really powerful. So those are 5 things that you can suggest to students to make for a more meaningful spring break. And I hope that your spring break is meaningful as well.